Right. So, what is a standard 100-watt radio draw on full key down?
They say 25 amps, but that's just the manual.
Yeah, I would go like right now. I had a 25 amp power supply for a long time, and it was never a problem. At the same time, I don't generally use any of my radios at like if it's a 100-watt radio, I don't run it at 100 watts. I usually run it around
Right.
75 to 85 because I just don't think it's a good idea to have your foot all the way on the gas pedal all the time.
I'm a war criminal, apparently.
And I was fine. I never had any problems. Right now, I've got a 30 amp power supply, and it gives me a little extra wiggle room. But I think 25 to 30 is what you'd want to look for 100 watts.
Right. And I think the price on that, I think I have that's a 30 amp power supply. And then it's like Abe said, that gives you some wiggle room on that. And then you got some additional options you can put on top of the power supply, stuff I'd highly recommend for any shack, regardless of your what size power supply you have. And one of the first dinguses that needs to be in every shack with your power is not this one specifically. This is an example. There are much better ones, but power pole bus system. And West Mountain Radio makes these. MFJ makes these, and they make nice ones with like individually. This one is not. This is a bus with 12-volt DC across the bus. That's it.
That's right, Andy. So I've got the owner's manual for the 7300 sitting up here on the screen for all y'all. And they say we recommend using ICOM's PS126, which is a 25 amp power supply. When connecting a non-ICOM power cable, the transceiver needs at least 21 amps. And so that would be full key down on a full duty cycle mode, plus the screen at full brightness, plus writing data out, voice recording to the SD card. And then maybe a little bit of headroom. I think there's still some room in that. It's probably good at like 13 or 14 amps. But, get some with some overhead, because the next thing that you're going to want to do if you have a 7300 is get a 9700 to go with it. You don't want to have two radios, two power supplies. And if you don't want to spend the money on the 9700, maybe you can get yourself a cheap, mobile radio, 2-meter, 70-centimeter radio, and sit it on top of the 7300. And if you, for some reason, don't ask me how I know this, but if you PTT both mics at the same time and want to talk, you're going to shut everything off because the power supply is going to choke and give up.
Well, what about if you get a tuner? Like sometimes the external tuner that requires a power draw, right? So
that's
some on that.
And I got this son of a gun in here sassing already.
Is it Don again?
No, it's Little Don. K5YVY. Little Don.
I'll go with that.
So he made a good point. Ring terminal to the power supply is quicker. Yes. And that's exactly what I have is a ring terminal coming off the power supply.
It's quicker once
going to this. And then what they were just talking about, I've got multiple things plugged into it. What Steve was saying, I don't want to buy a power supply just big enough for the radio because my tuner runs on 12 volts and it's plugged into the same power supply. And my 9700 is plugged into the same power supply. So now I don't run both the radios at the same time, but yeah.
I plug stuff in and out of I have an MFJ, one of those big power strips or whatever.
Yeah.
But like my SWR, my cross needle SWR meter plugs into that, right? Yep. So I can turn the light on. And then my tuner plugs into that. I have a 2-meter rig sitting here that I plug into that. If I'm going to sit here and mess around with this thing, my Hermes Light 2, I'll plug this into that. So, I mean, I'm constantly plugging stuff in and out of it.
Right.
That's why I use the... and look, we got Charles in the chat. What's up, Charles?
Charles in the chat.
That's why I use the power poles for everything, even though I don't think that they're the best connectors in the world.
So this is funny. Everybody's asking me how likely am I to TX on both radios at the same time? And I guess the short answer is not very, but it may or may not have happened once in the past, which is why I know this problem.
Was alcohol a factor?
I think I was doing like FT8 on the 891, and then somebody was on the 2-meter net, and I keyed up my Kenwood TM281A. This is back in the very beginning, so I had two mobile rigs sitting side by side, connected to the same 20 amp power supply, and I keyed down both at the same time. And I was such a new ham, I didn't even know why the power went out.
Yeah, so the thing is that can happen, but I would tell people just don't do it. It's not a good practice. Yeah. As a matter of fact, I tell people don't have them on at the same time. Now, a lot of times people like to listen, and that's fine and all. But if your antennas are close to each other, you could cause an overload issue with one of your radios by keying up the other one, even though they're far apart in frequency. It's still
It can make the
RF in the air.
OVF light come on.
Exactly,
That's
Todd.
exactly right. Yeah. And that's exactly what I have here is the 9700 and the 7610 stacked, and I don't generally run both at the same time. And like Abe said, I don't even have them on at the same time usually.
So Liberty Cave is saying define close. We'll just say if it is in the near field, right? So that would be a quarter wave, the lowest frequency that you're operating on.
Even if you're on the same band, then it doesn't matter how close they are, really. If someone's transmitting within eyesight,
Right.
and I mean like squinty off in the distance eyesight,